Designing the world we live in. It's the Tell Me More podcast. Join us as we celebrate the people who shape our communities and our lives.
Welcome to today's episode, the Tell Me More podcast, where we explore the crucial issues shaping our world. Today, we're focusing on housing affordability, a topic that impacts everyone. And joining us today, very excited, is a leading expert, advocate, and the executive director of the Microlife Institute, based here in Atlanta. Will is a passionate advocate for innovative housing solutions and has been instrumental in promoting micro-living in the Southeast. I'm really excited to learn more about your past and about the Microlife Institute as well, and how you got to where you are today. I feel very fortunate to also be based in Atlanta and have someone so close working like every day to move the needle on such a critical issue that impacts so many people. And this issue has only gotten worse in recent years. And so today I want to first learn a little bit about yourself and how you're working on this problem, unpack the problem a little bit more and understand what are we talking about when we say an affordability crisis, use the word crisis or affordability issues, and then uncover some of the potential solutions and opportunities that we see in the future to kind of how do we turn this around? Because at the end of the day, what we're talking about are people's lives, right? This is how someone lives, creates memories. This is where someone wakes up, they raise a family. We're not talking about abstract concepts here. We're talking about something very concrete. So anyways, without further ado, thanks, Will, again for joining us. Excited to have you and welcome to the podcast.
Awesome. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So I'd love to just hear a little bit more about yourself and also the company and business that you've built, Microlife Institute.
Yeah. So it's been we just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. July 14th of 2024 was our 10-year anniversary. And I can't believe I've been doing this for 10 years because my college degree was in sociology and theater. So I always was envious of my friends who knew exactly what they were going to do out of college and they had a guiding light. And I was just like, I don't know. I graduated. I ended up teaching English in Thailand for a year. And then I ended up in Atlanta, Georgia and started, I did what everyone knows they should do is use who you know, not what you know. And I was able to land a job at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution and worked my way up and was at Cox Enterprises basically for almost 9 years. And at the end of that tenure, I was the manager for community customer engagement, which I was so event marketing. I was the public, and the one that was a huge gift though that Cox Enterprises gave me was the introduction to knowing Atlanta and connecting with a ton of people. Atlanta is one of the biggest, smallest cities in the world. Like you just can, I literally can't go anywhere without running into someone I know, and so, but. There was that moment at 33, I was just like, hey, wow, this is not for me. I got to go. And so I did what most people don't do and what a lot of American culture does not do. And that is take a gap. I needed to, I didn't know what I wanted to do and I didn't know where I needed to go, but I needed to hit the reset button. So I did what most people should do at 33 is quit their job, sell all of their worldly possessions and end up backpacking and working on vineyards in New Zealand for 3 months.
Oh my gosh.
And so that was magical, but also scary as hell. I learned a lot about, I thought I was going to be a vintner. I was like, I'm going to go make wine. That's my new path. That's my new calling. And I was like, nope, I just like to drink wine. I know that now. And so people kind of like, oh, Will, is New Zealand where you found the tiny house movement? I'm like, no, New Zealand is where I found great Pinot Noir. And so don't get me wrong. I loved that moment. I only spent 3 months there, but it was that 3 months of just breathing again, disconnecting from this terrible 9-to-5 expectations that this culture we've created in the United States of what work is, and just kind of questioning what the heck am I supposed to do with my life. And I knew at Cox Enterprise, like, I can be more. I can do much more for this world than just make this person money or just do my job. And so I would love, as we get more and more successful, I would love to support people in basically that midlife refresh, because I feel like, as in our culture, they get us by the healthcare. They say, we got you. You can't leave because you need healthcare, and so you have to stay in a shitty job. I'm sorry. Can we swear?
You can swear.
Okay. So people end up staying in a shitty job or a shitty situation, and they're just thinking of their family and staying in their healthcare, and they are dead inside. And so I was lucky. I had no debt. I was just like, all right. I had no responsibility besides myself. I just bought a brand new car too, and I gave it back. Like I did some, like, I don't even know. Hindsight should not give him a car back.
Yeah.
But I love that car. It was a nice GTI. Anyway, after 3 months of enjoying wine and backpacking across New Zealand and working on vineyards, I knew it was like, hey, I could keep traveling, but like, not really feeling it. Like, let's go figure out what your next steps are. And luckily, I had some friends like let me move in with them, and I just started showing up to things around Atlanta. And one thing that was weird, though, is because I was this instant minimalist, the tiny house movement came across my social media, and I'm like, oh, what's this about? And I started leaning in deeper, and I was like, wow, this is really fascinating. Wonder who or what we could do with this. And so I was able to utilize meetup.com, and I was able to utilize Meetup, and I just created Tiny House Atlanta. And the original 11 people sat at the Wrecking Bar Brew Pub on July 14th of 2014. And we had a conversation. And then that conversation, so that 11 led to 100, led to 500 people, led to 1,000, said it led to 2,000. So I'm like, oh my God, this is a thing. So we became an organization, which quickly became a nonprofit. And, but I quickly realized, because when I bought tinyhouseatlanta.com, I also, for some reason, said out loud, microlifeinstitute.com. And so I bought both. So I already had a vision of where I wanted to go the inception of Tiny House Atlanta, because for some reason, Tiny House Atlanta is limiting. It's tiny houses and it's Atlanta. So Microlife Institute, that's a spectrum of conversations you can have. You can talk about the physical built environment, the mental ability, the sociological, the psychological effects of housing, just like you brought up earlier. So Microlife Institute, as my vision and as we are going, we are here to help design better housing to connect and reweave that social fabric back together. And so the evolution over 10 years from tiny house policy passed, we helped adopt the tiny house appendix for the state of Georgia. We put on 8 tiny house festivals, which were great in the beginning, which gave us funding. But then, once the shows kind of died down and the anomaly of the tiny house movement, like it just doesn't bring in the interest as it used to. But I quickly realized too that, like I said, Tiny House Atlanta was limiting. Microlife Institute allows us to be this bigger organization and have that robust ability to talk about a lot of things. And again, I was still thinking education advocacy. It was when, but then Kim, my previous business partner, we were like, we need someone to do it. We need someone to build something. And that's when we found our first parcel in 2017. And that was in East Point. And the Eco Cottage of East Point was born. But unfortunately, this is where the policy and the community comes into play. We were eaten alive. We really should have looked at the politics and the issues that government has, as well as the community, and we should have done a lot of vetting before just buying a piece of property and being like, oh crap. Like, even though we got it through, but with 28 conditions, the houses would have been at that time like $350,000 because all the work that we would have to do to them. And we basically just sat on the project and shelved it. Luckily, at that same time, City of Clarkston was like, we'd like your help. So we came in and helped rewrite. That's when Ted Terry, the mayor then, Ted Terry, He's now Commissioner Terry of Super District 6 of DeKalb County. He asked us to say, help us rewrite this cottage court ordinance. And so what we need to do as we upzone and as people rewrite policies, we need to create incentives for different products. We need to create incentives in our policies with good guide rails and good guidelines that allow diversification of housing. Whether it's a percentage on a street, there's this great street in Decatur. You might even heard of this tour we did last year. It was called the Missing Middle Housing Safari, or not just last year. It was earlier this year. It's like, wow, it's only August. And so what we did was just show how different typologies of housing could be right next to each other. And it just felt like a normal street. That's what we got to get back to. Like, we can't say this has to be single family. Like, there has to be diversification of housing products next to each other. I think at least in some areas, we need to go up to a sixplex. And then we need to also go into our policy and say, we do not need to sprinkler up to a fourplex. And so again, you look at a combination of things, and I'm getting ahead of myself, but a combination of things of why housing is expensive, and I'll get to that in a bit. But and feel free to jump in and ask questions. Sorry, I'm on a roll and I'm filled with coffee.
Yeah, keep going. You're good. You're good.
So Commissioner Terry, we rewrote the ordinance, and then in the city of Clarkston, and then suddenly he was just like, all right, we got it done. Hey, you want to build one? And we're like, oh, well, we didn't have a good time last time, but y'all seem really cool about this, so let's do it. And so so that was an amazing journey, and it was hard. I mean, it was the first one. We were scraping the barrel to get the cottages on Vaughan built because people were like, well, we'll support the next one. You know, it's like people needed to believe it to see it to believe it. But I was like, I need you to believe it so you can see it, so you can give me the money to get it done. And luckily, we had some believers that gave us some impact investment funds, as well as we did have an angel investor and said, I want to see this done. So fast forward, we build them. Don't build during a pandemic. That sucked. We moved in. We won regional accolades from the Atlanta Regional Commission. We won the 2021 Innovative Development Award, as well as 2022, we won the Jack Kemp Award for Affordable Housing Global Recognition. So here, this little project, a half acre, 0.57 acres, we put 8 houses on. And the fact that these are fee simple, you own your own lot, you own your own house, like, this is still single family. It's just in a cottage court. So it's like when people say, well, we don't want this in our neighborhood, we only want single family. Like, these are single family. What are you going to do? So again, but that goes back to the education. And then because we were able to put X amount of units, 8 units per half acre, we were able to really create affordability through density. And so there was no subsidy through funds. Like, we do not want to subsidize through any type of funds, because that just creates more work. That creates more ask and more federal dollars or state dollars or local dollars to keeping the housing cheaper, when there are other means like deed restrictions, HOAs, and some other stuff to really deter flipping and investment properties and things like that. When we do in city centers, I think we should, I need to sit with this, but, how do we make sure that an area actually is a community? I think within a certain radius of a downtown, there can be no Airbnbs, or there can be no short-term rental. Because you need people that live there, that own something, that care to actually be a part of the community. And so this whole evolution of microlife, we went from education advocacy and we stepped into this developer role, and we thought we were just doing it once. And then suddenly I got a taste for it. Like, oh, this is cool. Like, I want to do this. And so now we've really stepped into the missing middle housing spectrum. So we'll build up to 1,400 square feet. Like, our range is as small as we can get, and then up to about 1,400 or 1,500 square feet. Like, we're not against larger housing, but we are against palatial housing. Like, we don't want McMansions. We want to be able to use the lots that McMansions are on and put better density there, whether it be a fourplex or 4 units, or at least a duplex and 2 ADUs. So we want to make sure every project we do abides by some way that reweaves that social fabric or allows for connectivity. So I'm going to pause there to let you ask your next question.
Yeah, I have a couple follow-up comments. I just want to make sure our listeners heard a key phrase that you used. I'm wondering if you could repeat it, which was help design better housing. I think it was like the mission statement of Microlife Institute, something along those lines. I just want to make sure listeners heard that point, because I thought it was a really good one.
So our vision is to connect communities by expanding housing choice. Like, the single family market is dominant, obviously. You look at how we have dissected and segregated through classism, racism, prejudice, where we have also not built roads in a way that connect communities. So you talk about all the different styles of one way in, one way out, like type of communities, because they don't want people driving through. And that all comes back to the culture of community and culture of how we've evolved from the 1920s to 2020. And in the 20s, we were building to be closer to each other, and we were building, better walkability, better mass transit. And then unfortunately, car culture took over this idea that saying we need to be separated from each other. And now we're on this new level of like, we don't invite people over to our houses. I think there was a statistic. It was like, and before, and I have to relook this up, like, it's just keeps going down from like the 1950s of how many people have hosted at their houses versus like now. And not many people host and bring people to their home and connect and even hang out with their neighbors. So we, as a culture in the United States, we are all about get off my lawn. Like, why are you knocking on my door? So that's something else that I am going to be digging in. But again, I need to make money. So the pipeline of projects are going to pay for the institute side once I get that whole cranking. So, but
I just want to.
No, I was going to say the statement though is, we want to be able to create more attainable prices through better density, meaning instead of one house costing $500,000 to buy, we can put 2 houses on that lot and they're $350,000. So right there, even though 2 families can move in, like we still could put a 2-2 next to each other, a duplex or something. Like we need to create more a variety of starter and I call them ender homes, because we have a lot of seniors that are trying to downsize and stay within their zip code, and they're the ones that shot themselves in the foot. They're the ones that created this zoning mess.
Yeah, for sure. Before getting into some of the kind of like the problems that we see, your story is inspiring. I think the fact that you were 33 when you kind of made this switch, at that point, I think there's this ongoing notion of like, when you're at that point of your life, you have everything figured out. Yeah. And the fact that you were just kind of like willing to kind of, in a sense, drop it all, like reset. And then the key takeaway I have in my notes here is like the who you know. It's not who you know. It's not what you know. It's who you know. I think that was it's not what you know. It's who you know. You said that was a common saying. I've never heard it before, but I think that was really helpful to hear in terms of just like tapping into the people.
My also thing about me taking a leap was you don't have to be an expert to create change.
Interesting. Yeah.
Because you see something like, we're all connected. I don't have kids. I'm single. I have 3 dogs. Like, but I still want that school system to be productive, to pump out smart kids to help me when I'm in my 80s.
Yeah, for sure.
I want the city to have enough money to pay their park and rec people, so a place that I can take my dogs. Like, so, it's so interesting how we are we don't recognize how connected we are, but yet we silo all the stuff that we do in our society. And we need to have it flow in and out of each other because of the impact. Like, take Cobb County, for example, people over 65 don't pay higher taxes. So like that's a huge loss of income for a county that could improve other people's lives or improve the infrastructure. And like the fact that as developers, and now that I am a developer, I feel the annoyance of a city saying, well, if you build here, you've got to improve the street, you've got to improve the sidewalk. I'm like, that should be your job. Why don't you have money to fix that?
And that's why we have all these sidewalks that just stop at random places.
And that's why we have this cluster fuckery of sidewalks that make no sense. And I'm like, oh my God, like cities unfortunately need to become master planners. They need to say, nope, this street needs to be more dense. You can have 5 single family, 4 duplexes, and 3 triplexes.
Yeah.
That's it. But it needs to be more dense than this. Like, unfortunately, I know government's like, oh, we don't want to tell you what to do, but you need to have a plan, because the other people that have the plan are not a good plan. That's just it. There's no cohesive plan. You look at China, even though I don't believe in just like tearing down history and whatever, but they like built the better walkable city because they just said, we need a better walkable city and we have a plan. And as you talk about some issues of why we have created such this, expensive housing. Well, capitalism. We are greedy individuals, and there is no we. It is I. It is me. Yeah. And so the mission for us, that's why I love being a nonprofit developer, because I'm here for the mission. Like, don't get me wrong. I don't want to not make money, but any money that we make on projects goes back into Microlife, and that gives us a war chest that we can do the cooler project. I'm willing to spend the extra $50,000 or $100,000 or extra couple of months that it takes to get people to a yes for the better project than just get a project done. Yeah. That's when I don't like development, when they're just like, let's just get across the finish line, because the community can eat you up. The public can eat you up. The policy will eat you up, and the politics will eat you up. Yeah. And then you're just bitter. And you're like, I just want this done. And that's when, you take, for example, the Piedmont Park Amsterdam Walk. Have you been following that one? So that's
not, no.
The zoning right now is commercial, I believe, which allows them to go much higher and much denser, and the community can't do shit about it. Yeah. They propose to downzone, and the community freaks out and like, we don't want anything, leave it alone. And you're just like, you don't understand the situation. Like, they could already do what they want. Yeah. They're trying to involve you. And so it's very frustrating when you get a bunch of privileged people. But it's also just as frustrating when you get a bunch of misunderstanding, individuals that come to the table.
Yeah, for sure. And we'll get to some of those. One other just like takeaway that I want to highlight, which is the first thing that you did was start a meetup. And I think this is like an actionable thing that all of our listeners can like take away from this, which is, are you interested in something? Do you want to make an impact in a certain area? It can feel very big and not possible. And the act of just saying like, I'm going to take an action, I'm going to do something, and doing the building community first approach seems like that was like foundation to you then starting this project of like, hey, there was 4 people in this meetup, and all of a sudden it grew and it snowballed on this particular issue that you were passionate about. I think that's something that if you want to start something, if you want to get something done, it seems like that's like a very approachable way to kind of work towards that. So I'm really glad that you highlighted that, like building community first. Hey, just start a meetup. What's the worst that's going to happen?
I mean, I don't, it's funny because now I'm an organization that doesn't really need volunteers. I mean, we used to need a lot of volunteers. We are skipping our innovative housing summit this year because I feel like everyone's doing this innovative housing something. Like I'm talking at the ULI event in a couple of weeks. It's innovative housing something. So I'm like, okay, like everyone's talking about the same thing. So one thing that you probably know too is that we love to talk about housing. Oh my God. It's like yakety, yakety, yak. Yeah, same shit. What are we doing? What are we doing? And it's like, no, literally, like one of my biggest conversations I have with people that I ask is like, have you ever thought about getting out of your own way? I ask myself that too.
Yeah.
Like, because we are just in the way. We are so afraid of actually changing the policy that will open the floodgate. And maybe, and you know what? Floodgate is not the right term, because developers just want to make money. And that's a stereotype. They're going by their spreadsheets. Me, I want to see the better project, but it does need to pencil. It needs to squeak out a couple bucks. So how do you create the incentivization? How do you create the better zoning that allows for that, and that you don't have to go through? And I'm sorry, there's going to be a time, just like Massachusetts did, just like California did, there's going to be a statewide law that's going to tell a lot of these people tough noogies, and we're all going to have to go back to kindergarten and remember life's sometimes not fair. Yeah. And so I'm for it. I'm for a state allowance of ADU in your back, by right, ADUs in your backyard, because there's just this opposition that no one, they kick the can, they do another study. You know, it's so funny. We know the delay tactics that are happening throughout our communities, and that's another frustrating thing. And I get worked up about it, and I need to be very careful. Like, I'm not trying to piss people off, but I don't think people realize, you know, it's like that old adage: when's the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago. Yeah. When's the next best time? Today. That's the same with housing. Like, we should have passed these zoning laws 20 years ago, so we would actually be benefiting them right now. And so, but that's just it. It's almost analysis paralysis as well, because they're like, well, if we say required parking versus recommended parking, oh, what do we do if there's not enough parking? Oh no, someone has to walk a half mile to downtown. We're also obese. We're also lonely. Like, you know, there's just so much stuff in America. Like, oh no, you can't park right in front of where you need to go. It's that type of culture that is killing us. And so, I don't know. I laugh at all of these fears that are, I think, made up.
Yeah. I would love to talk about the policy piece as we start to like dive into some of the primary problems in terms of affordability when it comes to housing. We have two dynamics. You're talking about opening up policy for making it more possible to have a diverse range of options that makes it more affordable for folks. I'm curious, like, what is your stance on if we look at Atlanta and the nation picture, or in America picture? We have in Atlanta here, I think it's something like a quarter of housing is owned by private equity. We have these large private equity firms that own 90,000, 15,000, multiple firms that own huge swaths that are buying up houses. The government currently subsidizes some of those like activities to incentivize this. And this was kind of like a reaction to the 2008 crash. How do you prevent? I think one of the concerns is, whether it's valid or not, is if I open up zoning in my neighborhood here in Chosewood Park, is private equity? Is this just going to be an additional incentive for private equity to buy up this property? And in your mind, is that like people stand on different?
I mean,
I would love to
bring up again. It's again. This is where we're all connected. I don't think that people should own housing like what's happening. I don't think that should be allowed. I would love the government just to be like saying like, sorry, that's not a business anymore. Like literally it should not happen, because, you know, like I remember, you know, I was crying when I met this woman when she was just like, Will, I'm divorced. I just need a small space that I can feel like I can flourish. Wow. So how can we build that? Like, we're all, these people are building, like, again, we're so focused on money that we're not focused, but that's what also developers need, is a lesson in community. Like, if they build a better project, it is going to be worth more. Mm-hmm. It's going to be sought after. Like, if you look at Serenby, you look at Town at Trilith, you look at, you know, Opticos, what they're building in Tempe, Arizona, the cul-de-sac, like there's a project potentially in, where is it? Oh my God, I just blanked. What's the Opticos cul-de-sac project in Atlanta. But anyways, it's a car light, car free, whatever, walkability, connectivity. You know, just like I mentioned earlier when we were talking, I don't think Airbnb should be allowed within a mile radius of any rural town or a city center, because again, we need the people that believe in the community to live in the community. That's happening all over the world. Don't get me wrong, I'm a hypocrite because when I travel, I use Airbnb, and that's like I'm going to Greece and I'm just like, I can buy $50 a night, and it's like, it's great, but you feel really bad because someone should live there and be a part of that community when, the world is looking at our car culture and our suburban culture, like, look how great it is. And like, no, you guys need to be a better you, not a better us. And so I don't think we should have businesses that own housing like it's happening, or they can't own interstate. They can be statewide, but not nationwide. Break it up that way. But that just takes away from the ability to allow families to flourish. So then that fear is added to all the rest of the things of why nothing is changing. Then we're again, but so I feel like though, when you add housing, you can add different parameters like deed restriction. You can add an HOA that says it cannot be sold to an investment group. There are ways for, I feel, counties, and states that can push back against what is, eating up our inventory.
Even like bullet points of like what is causing the problem when it comes to housing affordability crises. People have differing opinions. Some people say, oh, we're just not building houses fast enough. It sounds like your perspective is we don't have enough diversity of options.
Inventory is an issue. That's one. COVID sent the investor market crazy. So now a lot of people own 2 houses or 3 houses, So, I mean, I'm guilty. I built a mountain home getaway. So I can't say like, you should only own 1 house because I own 2 but I still, they're all under, 700 square feet. So I feel like it's okay. COVID was just crazy to watch how expensive it made Atlanta. And the world and the nation, I guess. I guess the United States anyways. And the fact that like the national average, the state average of a house is like $350,000. That is crazy. That is, and that's a starter home, it's like, what? Like you're paying for an okay house that you got to fix up, and, you've got to have like 2 or 3 jobs, or at least both, if there's 2 adults living together, like, or you got to get roommates.
It's almost impossible.
It is. And so if you think about it, building smaller, you're sustainable because smaller footprint, you're less space to heat, cool, and build, less materials. It's like you're being more sustainable without having to do any bells and whistles, like no earthcraft, no LEED certification. You're just being more sustainable. And then, like I said, maintenance and cost and care less. But then also you're able to put more on the same lot. Like I said earlier, less to buy. So again, 1 lot that is 100, or like, a quarter acre or a, half acre lot, instead of 1 house, we put 8. Even my house could have been 1,000 square feet. So like, even if you did 8 1,000 square foot homes selling for $250,000, $300,000, you're still below the state average. You're providing a new product, and you're providing a connected density that allows people to naturally connect at their own pace. And that's what I definitely learned at Cottages on Vaughn, is that like, we're not all going to kumbaya in the beginning. It's getting to know each other. It's getting to know each other's ticks, and we're a dysfunctional family just like the rest of us, but we are still watching out for each other and making sure that we're all okay.
I have a slightly different perspective. I actually think there's almost been like a failure to think about adaptability when it comes specifically to office towers. Like the fact that we have so much vacant office space.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't adapt that to housing for the most part, unless it's like maybe a really old school office space. There's some feasibility, but like when it comes to repurposing space, we're just so limited. And we have
But
all
we're
this
also
vacant
having a
office
certain
space.
definition. So the issue with that is, back in the 1920s, they had, like what my grandpa lived in New York City, which is like boarding houses,
Yeah.
where you had a room and you shared the restroom or shared the bathroom, like it's a dorm. So there are ways for us, but again, the culture of housing and where it is, I need my own bathroom, I need my own laundry. Like there is this expectation in American life of having your own stuff instead of it being a step to where you want to go.
Yeah.
So I think if we looked at converting offices to starter homes, get in the city, and that's the thing about New York. You don't live in your apartment in New York. You live in New York City.
Yeah,
You be
for
a
sure.
part of everything. In Atlanta, you live in your car and you live at your house. And so
Yeah.
we try to shove everything in both. So we get
Yeah.
big ass cars and we get big ass houses and we try to put everything in it, like little movie screening theater and a bowling
Yeah.
alley or whatever. And then now it's just like then no one's going out. And so I find it funny that we do need to be adaptable and we need to define housing so much differently than what we think it is right now.
Yeah, for sure. Just to wrap things up, I'm curious on a personal note, like what's next for you here? Like, I'm gonna call Kamala Harris up right now and let her know that she needs a new HUD secretary, and he's
I,
located right
I
here
would
in Atlanta.
do that in a heartbeat. So we're building a development fund. Like I basically want to have, I don't want other government. I don't want government money. And I want government money now, but as we build our war chest, like I want like $100 million in our bank account so we can go into communities and say, you're going to do the project the way we want to do it because we know you will like it. Like, because, and we will pay for more than just the building. It would be more. So where I see microlife, so think of it as we are going to be creating mini attainable Serenbes throughout the nation.
Interesting.
So
And
my goal is
for those,
to go ahead.
sorry, for those who are not familiar with Serenbe,
Yes.
it's a community in south or south of
Fulton.
Atlanta. It's actually in a pretty rural area, but it's like a very kind of like dense development that has a series of different types of housing.
It's placemaking. So what they did was they created a city center and housing, but unfortunately the housing is just ridiculously expensive. Like you're going to spend $1 million+ for a 3,000 square foot house.
It leans into like the health and wellness and expensive lifestyle.
And the same thing at Town at Trillith, which is a walkable, great project as well. Dan Cathy of Chick-fil-A was behind it. But it quickly went expensive. Like 1,000 square foot house, you're going to look at $600,000, $700,000. And that's not attainable. So,
all right, we're wrapping up with your $100 million fund. Is this a plan to develop and sell or develop and rent?
Always develop. The goal is to always develop and sell. I do not want to, even though we do have a project that we do have to own and we will be renting to 60% AMI or below for 20 years. I don't necessarily want to be a property manager. I definitely, what I love is when a municipality calls me and says, we need your help to do a project. I'm like, let's do it. And then even if it takes a little bit longer, like, and I want to also be able to bring the money to that. Like I have an affinity for rural towns. Like I want to see them thrive because that's where you need, just like you and others, we need the entrepreneurs to flourish. We need the people who live there to see the moment of their opportunity to start that shop or basically do what I did, quit their job and follow another path. And if we can show that that's possible instead of just working at the local Walmart or local factory and helping them achieve their dreams, I would just love to be a part of that.
Yeah. Sounds good. Well, we're coming up on time, and I just want to say, just to wrap things up, thank you again for the conversation, offering your perspective and insights. Super helpful. I learned a ton. And I hope our listeners did